Okay guys, so in today's video we're going to be taking a close look at corn snakes. In this video I'm going to be talking about the natural history of corn snakes, how to care for them in captivity for just the everyday keeper, and also what they're just like to own as an animal. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into the video. So corn snakes are a relatively small constricting species of snake, and they come from the southeastern United States. So Carolina and Florida are two major places that they're from. And in the wild, they do actually exist in various different colour morphs, or variants, or as we call them, locales, such as the Carolina, the Miami, the Alabama, and my personal favourite, the Okatee. But naturally they would be found in sort of forested regions, although they have colonised like cornfields, which a lot of people think is where they get the name from, but they actually get the name corn snake from the pattern on the stomach, which really does resemble Indian corn or maize. And in the natural habitat, they would be eating a diet of small rodents, young birds. I wouldn't be surprised if they'd take an adult bird if they got the opportunity, lizards and other small vertebrates like that. But that is about it for natural history, so let's move on to care. So when you're buying an enclosure for a corn snake, the saying that bigger is always better is pretty much unanimously true, because these, surprisingly for a snake really, are actually quite active, and keeping them in a small enclosure, they just really don't like it in my experience. So definitely get an enclosure that's at least 4 feet long by 2 feet deep and 2 feet tall. Mine is currently in a 5 foot long enclosure, so it's a bit bigger than that, as like I said, bigger's always better and they do appreciate it. Now for furnishings, you're going to want to offer as many hiding spots as you can, so cork bark is a really good natural decoration you can use, and you also want to use branches to offer climbing opportunities, which they do really appreciate, as well as the exercise enclosure. Now for substrate, which is the stuff you put on the bottom of the enclosure, if you go in the sterile route, then you can use aspen or lignocell. They're both good substrates I've used. Although really the best thing you can offer them is a nice deep bioactive substrate, which basically involves putting insects in a load of soil. So if you want to find out more about that, then I'll leave a little link in a little card at the top right hand corner of the screen, and you can click that to watch my playlist with all my bioactive videos in it. But in terms of humidity, if you're having a ordinary wood chip type setup, then you don't want to spray it down. Room humidity will do you fine. Although if you're going for a bioactive enclosure, then spraying it down once or twice a week is definitely going to help out. Some people will say that corn snakes really don't need lighting in order to thrive, but I would completely disagree with this, because in nature obviously they're going to be exposed to light, and so keeping them in an unlit box in captivity really isn't fair, and it's also not going to do your plants very good if you've got a bioactive enclosure. But in terms of lighting, if you've got a 2 foot tall enclosure, then a 7% output UVB bulb is what you're going to want to go for. The UVB aspect basically means that they can use the light to synthesize vitamin D3, which is essential for proper bone development. And as reptiles, corn snakes can actually see into the UV part of the electromagnetic spectrum, so it does help out with the vision too, and that is an appetite stimulant. So for fussy feeders, do try UV lighting because it can help. But UV lighting essentially is just beneficial, and it's not that hard to set up. You want to go for a long linear fluorescent over the little coil bulbs that you can get, because they just disperse the light much better, and you want to position the light so that it's sort of towards one end of the viv or the enclosure, so that towards the cool end of the enclosure, I'll mention cool and hot ends in a second, but you want it so that the lightest part of the enclosure is also the hottest. Now, as I just alluded to, corn snakes do actually need to be heated, so unlike other animals like hamsters or budgies for examples, reptiles do tend to be, well, as far as the ones we know, they're all ectotherms, so that means that they take in heat from their environment and regulate the temperature using natural cues as opposed to doing it internally. So you need to provide hot and cool zones so that they can do this. Now you want to position the heating element that you're using towards one end of the enclosure, as I just said, the one that's also the lightest. And at this end you should be heating it to about 30 degrees Celsius, and that can trail off to about 20 degrees Celsius or room temperature at the cool end. Now, to achieve this temperature, there are lots of different heating elements you can use. So the most basic is the heat mat, but I really wouldn't recommend those. What I would recommend, however, are ceramic heat emitters or Arcadia's deep heat projector. And whatever you use, no matter how simple or complex it is, it should be thermostatically controlled. And if you want to find out more about thermostats, they are quite a big topic. So if you aren't sure about them, definitely check out the little card that should appear in the top right hand corner of the screen after you've watched this video, because in that video I talked all about thermostats, and hopefully that should clear up any confusion. But if you're gonna get any reptile, you're gonna need a thermostat, so it's definitely worth a watch. The part that tends to put people off keeping snakes as a rule is that they do have to eat vertebrates as they would do in the wild. This isn't the case for all snakes, mind, although it's definitely the case for corn snakes. And what basically you're going to be feeding them most of the time are pre-killed rodents, which you can buy at reptile shops. You'll keep these frozen in your freezer and defrost them quickly, but without cooking them when you're going to feed them off. Hatchling corn snakes are going to eat young mice, so pinkies we call these, because at about a day old they have no fur and they're pink, and as they get older you're going to feed them larger rodents. And honestly, variety is key, so if you can get a hold of chicks and quails and things and offer those to your corn snake, then that will be great. So, as a rule, corn snakes are quite a docile animal, and they are quite fun to hold. As hatchlings, they can be quite skittish, although, as a rule, as I've said, they do grow out of this, but there are going to be some exceptions. They aren't very likely to bite. I've had mine for several years now, and he's never bitten me. But basically, as long as you handle them properly and give them respect, they are a joy just to work with. So definitely a great animal to consider if you want something to hold. And with that, we finally reached the end of this video. Now, as you can probably tell, this was a long video and I did try and cram as much information into it as I could. So if you want to find out more, then definitely go and have a read rather than just getting a corn snake straight after watching this video, because it definitely doesn't contain all the information you're going to need to keep one. But anyway, I hope that you found it useful, and I did actually do a video like this in the past, but I've learnt a lot since then, so I thought that it was about time that I made another corn snake care guide. But anyway, if you want to see more videos like this, then do subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.